Hey, 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 happy Sunday, happy Sunday, happy Sunday. Today is, I think, this is our 22nd episode. So I thank everyone who's been with us over the past 2 years. We are the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, and this is our show, our media arm, Black Civics, the Black Civics Collective, and I am your host, Friday Jones. And whew, honey, this week, the SEC games and the colleges and the NAACP have absolutely been the hot topic of this week. But this is a reparations world. We need folks to tap into New York and the U.S. Freedmen Project. You can find them on social media, but apparently there is a bill that they have been pushing for that is being halted in the tracks again by Salages. What's odd to me about that particular little bit of news is the fact that Salages is an assembly woman out of New York. I forget what her district is, but she is the person who really worked for 2 whole years to block the reparations bill that was worked on and presented by Assembly Member Nikki Lucas out of Brooklyn, New York, my hometown. And now here it is. It's another year. It's another bill, and Salages is standing in the way. I think we have to call our politicians out when bills are set forth from the people, and when the bills are set forth from the people with legislators who are on board with what the people want, right? We the people, and then we have legislators standing in the way. So you can follow U.S. Freedmen Project on social media to stay engaged, but the New York family needs some help right now. As far as the NAACP, and the college students, and asking college students to take a step back and to go to other schools that are not part of the SEC. I don't really follow sports, y'all, but I get the gist of it. Here's my challenge with that. Here's my challenge. This is me speaking as an individual, not as the president of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. When Kamala Harris, in I think under 100 days, ran for the presidency of the United States, we had all kinds of Black organizations, Black men for Democrats, Black women for Democrats. We had, all of these different large bodies of organizers that raised collectively $700 million. They say it's $1.2 billion. I'm just going to stick with the $700 million, right? You all you raised this within 100 days. Here we are in the middle of an election cycle. Voting rights have been gutted by the Supreme Court. And instead of the NAACP, which colored people, they do a lot of BIPOC work. I don't know how much Black work they do anymore, but in any event, you have this national organization with national reach, with chapters across all of the United States. You're telling me this organization cannot reach out to all of those people who are fundraising for Kamala Harris during her presidential bid. They cannot raise funds. They cannot find lobbyists. They cannot run negative campaign ads against the legislators that really pushed that legislation down in Louisiana. I believe it's where it originated from. The case originally started in Louisiana. They can't hire forensic accountants to follow the money to see who the donors are so we can call people out in real time during an election year. But the best idea that we have, and we have Roland Martin giving his commentary about each generation has to sacrifice. Why are they needing to sacrifice careers that they've been working on probably since they were in Pop Warner? Why do they have to sacrifice in this way? And I'm not saying that we as Black people don't need to, strike, don't need to do certain things, but the plantation known as the NCAA has been in existence for some time. The last time it was revamped, I believe Condoleezza Rice was the chairman. She wrote the report. If you haven't read the report, you should go read the report. In that report, she basically said, okay, I don't think these players should make money, but they should have basically the ability to make money based on their name, image, and likeness. And so now the name, image, and likeness is being played with. I don't understand this, having the students to protest. That is an avenue to go, but I think the NAACP needs to flex in a stronger way to make it all make sense. So, with that said, I'm not gonna hold you guys too much because this guest. First of all, I want to shout out Black Lives Matter Indianapolis because last year they invited me to speak at an annual event, reparations event that they have. The city of St. Paul, Twin Cities, actually, there are two reparations commissions that are happening. Beautiful people, beautiful reparations family. And that is how I met today's guest, the good brother, Jeremie Dwayne English is his full name. And the good brother reached out to me because there's some things we need the reparations family to know. Brother Jeremie is a native of St. Paul. He's an original a member of the St. Paul Recovery Act steering committee to get the reparations resolution passed, right? Original member of the St. Paul Reparations Book Club, currently a mental health program assistant within the Twin Cities regional area, and he's worked with the healthcare field for over the past 13 years. I just want you all to give a big, hearty welcome to the good brother, Jeremie English. Brother Jeremie, welcome.
Hey, what's up, Friday? You know what it is. I appreciate the introduction. It's good to see you again. Of course, last time I seen you, you was dropping jewels up here in St. Paul. You know what I mean? Actually out there in Bloomington at that National Reparations Commission convention that we had. So great, excellent information that you brought here to the state. Again, when it comes down to the St. Paul Recovery Act Community Reparations Commission, I was just newly elected to chair this January, and what can I say? It's a very much a dream to be at the forefront of what we're calling, and what we consider reparative justice. So to be at the forefront of that, still learning, still building, but definitely being in the midst of it is very, very rewarding.
Well, congratulations, because it's no easy feat to get laws passed in this environment. And you in terms of your activism, before we hop into what I know is like the big body of work that I want us to share with the family today, I just want people to know a little bit more about you. I know when I visited St. Paul, I love when we do these historical tours. We did the tour of Dred Scott, so in his living quarters. So just talk about the city itself, talk about you, how you got into this work initially. Tell us some of the history of St. Paul that we might not know.
Okay, I can give you a little game here. Well, again, I'm a native of St. Paul. I'm a native of St. Paul's historic Rondo community. Rondo is a community kind of similar to communities across this country that was devastated by a highway inception in the late '60s. Well, actually, it started it started construction in the late '50s. But I am a native of that neighborhood. His historic era. It had over 1,000 homes. It had over 1,000 businesses that were destroyed. By the construction of the Highway 94 here in St. Paul, and it did have a huge effect, on the community and where it stands today. When you include gentrification, and other parts of disenfranchisement. At this point, that community really is in strong repair. But I'm definitely a native of that community. It brought me to where I am today. It was a beautiful community that I grew up in. Um, Actually, my parents bought a house. Their home was directly right across the street from Highway 94.
Oh,
So
wow.
I grew up right across the street from the highway that was incepted, that destroyed the community. You know what I mean? So, it really gave me some good, let's say, it gave me a good view, you know. not health wise, of course, but it gave me a good view on the historical, just the historical devastation, that was brought to a community that I was born in, and how great that community was, how powerful that community was, and how strong it's still structured, to this day. We do have we do actually, I want to say in July, we have, an annual Rondo event, that kind of commemorates, some of that historical, you know, just that historical history that we made. And again, when it comes down to um, just the reparations movement, I started really taking a look at what reparations really looked like in the late 90s. This is about 26
Mm.
years ago, when the great brother Johnny Cochran was going after reparations. And, back then, you had a lot of cats in the hip hop era that were talking about it, as well. And, what can I say? That knowledge movement back then, I'm not just talking about the early 90s, but the late 90s as well. That knowledge movement really enabled a lot of Black men here in the Midwest um, to really find what their identity looks like and feels like. And of course, I grew up in, again, I'm a 70s baby. So, I grew up in the 80s. The 90s was kind of considered my era. And then when you get, past the 90s and, Y2K, of course, we get into, you know, uh, you know, the, the Trump part two. I mean, well, actually the Bush part two and the Obama eras, and, kind of, me basically maturing into myself and my identity, and kind of really not only kind of morphing into what I was, but what I wanted to do in regards to helping my people, because I'm part of a unique ancestry. My mom was born on a plantation in Mississippi,
Wow.
and my dad is from the oldest incorporated Black town in American history, which would be Brooklyn, Illinois. So, just having that historical history that migrated to Minnesota, for a better life, and, to see the devastation that they seen when they got here, when it came down to the construction of that highway, and being able to kind of, you know, encapitalize that, it within myself, you know what I mean, and understand who I was. It really brought me to reparations. Um, and like I said, when I started looking at what Johnny Cochran was doing in the late 90s, I stayed with it. Of course, I always kind of stayed connected a little bit to the conscious movement and the conscious community. I always didn't really necessarily tie myself to it, but I always stayed connected to it. I really started getting myself involved probably right around 2014. Right around 2014, I really started taking a look politically at where my identity was. And all my life, I was, kind of told certain things. Us Black folks in our communities, we're kind of talked to about certain political accrements, how you should and who you should vote for, and what party's this, what party's that. As I grew older and started studying politics for myself, I started to create my political identity, and it kind of um, it kind of tied into what I was taking a look at historically when it comes to reparations. Because technically speaking, Black people haven't received a dime in reparations in this country.
We have
And,
not.
and legislatively, there have been movements that have been strong, but that have been stagnated and burnt out on purpose. So, um, for me to be in this circle right now, my good sister Friday, it's kind of a full circle move for me because I like I said, I was a '70s baby that kind of really uh, was grounded in my history, but I didn't really get out of the box when it came to it. I really kind of stayed in the volumes of just exploring and learning, like I am today, you know what I mean? And, I'm still doing that, as well. So, yeah, it's been a journey for myself and my family. But, St. Paul's my home. I definitely understand some of its historical ties, to this country when we talk about our great brother Dred Scott and how he was ruled three-fourths of a man. And just, you know, some of the aesthetics, definitely the spirits are still among us up here in this state. You felt it when
I
you seen you felt it
I
when the
totally felt
uprising.
it. First of all, for people that don't know, and I think this is a piece like we're not going to find in our history books, but this is part of what was shared by the docents that day, which was that first of all, Dred Scott was married. He had a wife. They had, if I remember correctly, two daughters. And what was happening was their daughters were coming of age. Their daughters were starting to hit like their little teenage years, and that is the point at that was the trigger. So people, when we talk about traumas, and I this is a not the comparison most people want to hear, but people who have been violated as children typically have a trigger when they reach adulthood, meaning they're going to fight back even more, or they're going to address whoever hurt them. I think with Dred Scott and his wife understanding now that their children, their girls, were of an age where they were up next, right? And they couldn't protect them anymore. And so, as a family, they decided to fight back. And those quarters that they lived in, I mean, were small. Like it's a family living in what might be a modern dining room, with like stone walls and a big stove because I believe they cooked or they were
Like a
chefs.
half of
And
like a half of efficiency.
yeah, half of an efficiency, and it's a fort. It's a federal military fort, and I think that when we say things like the United States is complicit in slavery, I don't know how many people know that when Dred Scott was fighting for his freedom, he was being held in the United States fort. It's not like he was just, I don't know. I don't know if being on a plantation is better. He certainly wasn't on his own home and land, but he was being held at a United States fort until the decision by the court was made final. And so I think it's just important to point that out. I see Jeremie is taking, it looks like a quick phone call. I didn't get to say it, but Dana, if we could pull up our Black Civics card so we can remind people why we do this show. I just want folks to remember why it is that we do this particular show. We want people to be civically engaged. That's why the show is called Black Civics. That means civics being the study or science of privileges and obligations of citizens. I posted yesterday, the NAACP, I think, is actually doing a survey after all the backlash because it seemed to be all about what they were doing. So I think they were the sponsors of the survey. They kept asking about whether or not it wasn't my intent to vote. It had to do with an emotional thing. It wasn't like, do you plan to vote? But voting is a primary function of engaging civically. And I think we need to do that whether we are responding to a particular action like what is happening with the NCAA, Voting Rights Act. Those might be motivators, but we should be always motivated to vote for our self-interest. And so that is why we do this show. We have the good brother Jeremie back up. I just want you to know, I had someone do some research for me. So when I have people here from different places, I just want to give folks context on their state and their state that has contributed to Holocaust victims. And in the state of Minnesota, this is in alphabetical order, $14.2 million. So when you talk about reparations and Black people not receiving reparations, when we talk about the state of Minnesota, which really was the seat of the Dred Scott decision, and we see that the state itself has supported Holocaust victims, and we know that the war was in Germany, it was in Europe, it was not fought on American soil. I like to reference that to just give people a little bit of parity so that they see what we like to say all the time, what can and cannot be done, but we can see obviously what can indeed be done.
You couldn't have broke that down no better, my good sister Friday, because the bottom line of it is, um, we do have a state bill also. It's called the Minnesota Migration Act. I believe that is bill. I don't want to misstep it, but they can look it up as the minute. You can look it up as the Minnesota Migration Act. It's a bill that we've had on the table for the past 4 years. So for 4 years, we've been taking a look at the state legislator. We've been going down there and lobbying. We have stakeholders. We have supporters of this bill. We have Black organizations that support this bill. And unfortunately, we're just not, there's a lot of things going on. And unfortunately, that bill has not passed yet. But the work of the St. Paul Recovery Community, the St. Paul Recovery Act Community Reparations Commission, what that work is doing is it's providing a blueprint of how this reparations, in particular, this reparations program, can not only be successful, but it can bring that reparative justice that is needed for Black people whose ancestors are American descendants of United States chattel slavery. So, I mean, we're here to do that, and hopefully, that will speak volumes, to the state, so they can truly see, some of the devastation needs to definitely be repaired.
All right, and I dropped the bill number. I found it. It's FF 2368. A lot of people
Thank
don't
you.
even, we talk about the Great Migration. Obviously, it was a significant period, I think from the 1930s all the way through pretty much 1968. So I rounded up to like 1970. And people don't really say that Black Americans were refugees within their own nation. And so the Great Migration, it's often talked about just in terms of work and economy, but you got to remember there was a lot of racial terror. The Black Summer was the summer of either 1919 or 1920. We had the Social Security Act of 1935, basically saying that farm laborers and domestic laborers were not entitled to Social Security. 60% of those groups of people were the Black Americans. And so they basically iced us out of state aid in that regard, governmental aid. And in talking about Dred Scott, I'm taking a couple of classes now, and the 3/5 compromise, which you see it in the Constitution. The Constitution does not ever address Negroes. It doesn't address us as Black people. The only time it uses the word of slavery is at the ending of slavery. They don't, even when they stopped importing African people into the United States, it refers to us as other people. And the 3/5 compromise is actually weighted voting. It's racist. Don't get me wrong. It's racist. But basically, it was the white farmers on rural land saying, look, we need to be able to be one-to-one with you northerners, which have big cities, and we don't have as many people, so we need a way to have weighted voting. And so I like to always approach it from that aspect, because we numerically in this society, particularly after the first importation of ethnic Europeans, um we've always been a numeric minority. So where's our weighted voting? Where's our ability to actually be one-on-one with dominant society? But people don't talk about things
Right.
like that. I want us to take a quick break. I want folks to share this video. We're going to get into how the good brother Jeremie reached out to me, and we want to share some dates that are coming up with what's happening with your commission. But I want to get to the heart of that REIA stuff when we get back. Okay, so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
Welcome. We are the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. Our mission is to advance the national movement for reparations. The United States Office of Management and Budget set 5 minimum standards for collecting racial data. The Black race is defined as a person having origin in any of the Black racial categories of Africa. NAASD has recommended that the OMB disaggregate data to accomplish 3 goals: decouple race from ethnicity, create an ethnic term that exclusively identifies descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, and create an ethnic term that preserves the American freedmen political status. The ethnogenesis of the African American identity is a result of ethnocide. The identity is from a people with shared history. Race identity plus ethnic identity equals peoplehood. Together, we can fix this dilemma with the OMB. We can build a coalition, grow the movement, and create a unified demand. What can you do to get involved? You can join NAASD today at www.naasd.org. You can email the OMB using our toolkit, or you can donate to NAASD so that we can continue this work. Thank you for your time. And stay connected with us on social media at NAASDORG. We are on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can also sign up for our newsletter at www.naasd.org.
All right. Closed mouths do not get fed. So, like our little commercial said, you can always donate to us at naasd.org. Again, NAAS as in Sam D.org. All right. So, Jeremie, I need you to tell the people why you reached out to me.
It's a good question. That's an excellent question. The reason why I reached out to you, my good sister, is because, recently, there has been, an initiative that's been going around, and it came to my attention, from one of our reparations commissioners. It was called the Racial Equity Impact Assessment, and what she was looking at is she was looking at it, from a commissioner perspective, and she was looking at it, in a way where she was saying, for example, well, it would be great to attach this, to the commission, if it's going to be looked at, after our report is completed, it would be good to have some, some standing, parameters that are looked at based off, impact. And, I just, I kind of, myself, I kind of asked questions about it because, there was some, trepidation, just, for me personally. I had a little trepidation about it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to do my own kind of digging to really kind of understand what RIA really was. So I actually took I want to say it's a 1.5 hour training online, and it went well. I mean, in regards to me understanding what it is, but I had to break down how could that benefit American descendants of United States chattel slavery, and then that's when I started running into some extreme concerns.
So let me pause you right there really quickly, Brother Jeremie. And this is coming from CORE, and this is DC's Racial Equity Organization, which has defined this REIA. And this is according to the DC law, racial equity means the elimination of racial disparities such that race no longer predicts opportunities, outcomes, or the distribution of resources for residents of the District of Columbia, particularly persons of color or Black residents. So racial equity impact assessments are basically disparity reports. But the disparity reports are done by race. And one of the reasons that I got alarmed when you called me to ask if I had ever heard of it, is because when I was at the third session permanent forum of people of African descent in the United Nations, there was a push, or there was research that was being done in connection with the United Nations, basically with this racial equity impact model. And the research came out of First Repair, which is Robin Ruth Simmons' organization. She partnered with the University of Miami, and they used United Nations principles to try and basically sort of bridge this reparations gap through this racial equity assessment lens. And my issue with that is that it denies American history. It denies the fact that in the United States of America, there was chattel slavery. There were treaties that were made after the Civil War with the 5 indigenous tribes. Today, the Negroes that went on the Trail of Tears are recognized as freedmen people. Black Americans are not recognized as American freedmen by the United States government. And when we in racial equity assessments don't have an opportunity to say that we are American freedmen, that we are descendants of people who were enslaved in the United States, these disparity reports lump our community together in a way that's not beneficial to American freedmen. Somebody, I think you might have a little feedback, Jeremie. Just turn your volume on your phone down just a little bit. But we don't have the ability to show within our big group if we are harmed, if we've been the most harmed. And the Color of Wealth report for California, you can see where disaggregation of data is not just good for Black Americans, it's good for the AAPI community. It's good for the Caribbean and Latino community, because within the different groups, you have different groups of people coming from, at times, places where the United States has had some sort of war action or military action, and they're coming in as refugees. And you'll see the disparity within other racial and ethnic groups when that is the case. You see it with us in the Color of Wealth report. And I think that was why you kind of reached out to me. And I said, we got to get him on Black Civics to talk about this, because the city of St. Paul has what coming up?
Well, we are based as a, for example, we are based as a, within our ordinance, we are based as a, what they consider a lineage-based ordinance, because we are to make recommendations for American descendants of United States chattel slavery. And I just know, I'm glad you broke it down, and I need you to do that again as well for my commission. Right. This Wednesday, right? I'm putting you on the spot right now, because you're so beautiful and elegant in the way you say it. And I think that's the most important key piece here, my good sister Friday, is when it was brought to me, I was able to take a look at it and analyze it, but I really had to break it down, in the way that you did. You know what I mean? Because when you talk about disaggregating the data, and that disaggregating data is a huge factor in our historical harm, our historical trauma, our historical evidence, our historical compensation, our historical restitution. It all ties into disaggregated data. And I just needed extra eyes on what I was seeing, because I really needed, a excellent, perspective. And you gave an excellent perspective on, if it's going to be something like what RIA is about, which is racial equity and impact assessment. Well, that data has to be desegregated completely amongst groups, because we have so many different ethnic groups in Black society, as far as in 2026 on U.S. soil, that it's vital at this point that the American ancestors, of United States, United States chattel slavery. It's vital that that data gets added specifically for them, so we can start looking at reparative justice for past harms. And it will be impossible to get there based off of a racial equity impact assessment, because now you have every avenue for folks to legally challenge what we consider our harms. And I don't think I just didn't want to open that can of worms right now. I wanted to really get some very good expertise, understanding on what this initiative actually is, and then have confidence in understanding why it's not. It really isn't anything that we should be looking at right now in the way that it's incepted.
We absolutely should not be. I mean, I have a separate podcast that I do, and I've covered reparations in different municipalities that are under attack for doing race-based legislation. So we have Evanston, which is Robin Ruth Simmons, one of the main people who was able to bring that legislation forward with the research of the good brother Dino, and they are in litigation. That recently the judge said that the complaint against the city could move forward. Right? We don't know what the outcome is going to be, but we have a Supreme Court that's gutting voting rights. Right? They're moving the ball like dominant culture does, and so where there were some protections, if you will, around voting and mapping and congressional districts, that is out the window. As long as you say you're not changing the maps because of race, you say, oh, it's just politics, or it's just some other thing. all of a sudden it's legal because it's non-racial. And we see that we have a lawsuit in San Francisco. We see that the Department of Justice, Hermit Dillon, came forward and shut Asheville down. And Asheville, hands down, is my best model, because you had the municipality put $2 million in the pot. You had the county put $2 million in the pot. They were about it. They had an outside third party stakeholder group that actually provided oversight to the reparations, and all of that went out the window. And so I just think when we're talking about this idea of racial equity impact assessments, do I think that kind of research needs to be done? I do think it needs to be done, but I do think that data needs to be disaggregated. And in the research that I did in preparation for the session, and folks, I dropped the link to St. Paul. So if on Wednesday, the 27th, you want to participate and you want to see this discussion and the presentation that I've prepared for Jeremie and for the commissioners in St. Paul, Wednesday, May 27th, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, you can go to the reparations website that I dropped in the comments, and make sure you come and register. I didn't want to put the Zoom information because commissions get Zoom bombed
We're a little
by
tight about that.
weirdos who want to,
Yeah,
have
that's a
sexual
little
relations on camera. So I didn't want to subject you
Yeah.
all to that by putting the information there. But I do, for this audience, want to make sure you all know that is happening, and it's something that the movement needs to be made aware of, because I think people do things in good faith. I don't think people are always, they're against the lineage reparationist. I don't think they thought that far about it. I think they're just trying to prove their case. But just like the Supreme Court moved the ball with voting rights, you got to anticipate dominant culture moving the ball as we continue to push the ball forward.
And I want to add in there real fast. There has been recent legislation up here in the state of Minnesota that has gotten stalled. And we've seen it in real time happening because the language started with the term African. And again, I want to make sure that I'm steering this commission to reparative justice, specifically for American descendants of United States chattel slavery. Like we talked about, and like we always, even examined. Yes, there are certain ways that monolithically in 2026, the term Black is being attacked. At the same time, that doesn't have anything to do with a lineage-old debt, specifically compensation and direct harm to a ethnic group of people that were ethnogenocized on this soil. I love all Black people to the fullest, but the bottom honest line is, in order for us to protect and ensure accountability, the only way is to do it based off of lineage. And constitutionally, this is what they're showing us. So this is what we need to be doing.
Agreed, 120%. American freedmen is a political status. When you look at the freedmen classification of the 5 civilized tribes, it's a political status. And I think we have to stand on the history and the recent determination by the United States government acknowledging that fact. It always has been. in terms of who we are as a group. And I don't think we need to shy away from that. I mean, I, your family comes from such a rich background. You know, my family, the black folks, the white folks, the indigenous folks, they all are part of America's tapestry. And I think that you can't, as a nation, you know, you can't even honor yourself if you don't honor the people of that nation fully, and honor the history of the nation, and not just when we need to hang up a Confederate flag. I mean, losers of wars don't generally get to fly fly flags, you know, with the new nation. That's not a common thing. And so this idea of sort of denying the history, it's dishonest. We are down to almost our last 10 minutes. I have some flyers I need to share for Juneteenth, including the event that you all are having that is an in-person event. And Dana, if we could start with that flyer, I just kind of want to give people some dates and information that they definitely need to know. And then I want to give you, Jeremie, the final word so you can let folks how to know how to follow you, how to stay involved. Dana, can we bring up the June 13th flyer for St. Paul? It's the last item in our media assets. All right, and so we have a listening session. Ooh, this is kind of small, y'all. I can't even see these details, but you can use the QR code to make sure if you are in St. Paul that on, I believe it is June 13th, there is a live listening session that's happening. And so you can make sure that you're there, make sure that you're present. Again, if you can tune in on Wednesday, May 27th, you can go to St. Paul's Reparations Commission website and you can find out that information, because we need people and activists in particular to show up to understand what is happening. I think on the East Coast, you know, there is a good relationship, I want to say, with N'COBRA and with NARC. And I don't want to say that they're the driving force behind this, because I don't know that to be true, but I do know this kind of language of REIA, which again stands for, oops, I closed the thing. Tell them what it stands for, Jeremie.
Where's it at now? REIA. I didn't. Oh yeah, that real. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I can tell you that outright. Racial Equity Impact Assessment.
So the racial equity impact assessments, I need advocates to really be in place on Wednesday, the 27th. We also have Elmer Geronimo Pratt, our gun club out of Holly Springs, Mississippi. They are doing some good stuff, fun stuff. We know Juneteenth is coming up, so I'm putting out our affiliates, putting them on early Juneteenth. If you're in Mississippi, if you're in Tennessee, drive on over to Holly Springs and see what the Elmer Geronimo Pratt Gun Club has going on. And then for the folks in California, in Northern Cali, there is the Coalition for Just and Equitable California is having on June 13th. Everything is going down June 13th. They're doing another read session up in Sacramento, going to meet with legislators, talking about reparations. They have a current bill to kind of work out the genealogy. Last I heard, we can take this down. Last I heard, the genealogy funds, or the $12 million that Senator Bradford put to the side for standing up an actual agency in the state of California, is now, from my understanding, going to the Tides organization behind this genealogy. I, for the life of me, don't know why anyone needs $12 million to come up with genealogy rules when there are accredited genealogical organizations, including the Smithsonian, including the Mormon Church, that they already do this to make guidelines. And as a commissioner, although I'm not speaking in my capacity as a commissioner, the city of Los Angeles spent $500,000. I don't know why California feels the need for there to be $12 million worth of additional research. But that's all I'm going to say to that. Good brother Jeremie, I do want you to tell people how they can stay engaged with you on social media. How can they stay engaged with the St. Paul Reparations Commission that you are the newly named chair of?
Thank you, my good sister, for having me on. Again, when I reached out to you, you immediately got a hold of me back and you responded in excellent form. So I just want to give you a shout out and thank you. You know what I mean? Because it helped me kind of build even broader relationships with commissioners that are still understanding how to become reparations commissioners, you know, just like I am still building myself as well. You can find me at first of all, I really want folks to go check out of course the St. Paul Recovery Act Community Reparations Commission page here in St. Paul. But we also have a dual page. It is called the St. Paul Recovery Act.com page. All one word. St. Paul recoveryact.com. You can check out great information. You can leave comments. We are fighting for right now an anti-Black hate crime resolution that the commission just passed. Our commission just recently passed a anti-Black hate crime resolution that we really need our city council to move forward with. Especially when we're talking about commemorative times like Juneteenth coming up, we really need that protection. So if folks can really check into that as well, I really appreciate it. You can also check me out on Facebook, Jeremie English. And again, I just appreciate you bringing me on, Sister Friday. And we're going to be doing more building. So, I mean, this ain't going to be my first time.
This will not be your first or your last time, and thank you so much for bringing this to my awareness. I'm so grateful that I have information. I don't know. My mother says she doesn't know how I store so much of the historical information that I do, but for whatever reason I'm able to do it. I data dump a lot of other stuff. I don't hold on to a lot of stuff, but when it comes to this work, I'm just glad that I was able to respond to the call again for advocates in particular. So whether you're in New York advocating, San Francisco, if you're up in Illinois, if you're down in North Carolina and Asheville, I still feel like those commissioners and or advocates need to make sure that they are coming forward to get this information, because it really is vital to the work as we continue to do the work. Thank you so much for calling me and engaging. Thank you so much for being here with us today on Black Civics. We're going to take you off the stage, but I need you to hang on for a few minutes. And then Dana, it's voting season. Y'all give it up for the good brother, Jeremie English from St. Paul, making sure that other reparationists know what's going on. That is the whole reason why we did this show today, so folks can stay civically involved, including staying up with the St. Paul Recovery Act, which has their own website, and I'm going to run their website on the bottom again as I speak. But when it comes to voting, I just want people to know, we have some things to consider before you go and vote. And if we could bring those 10 things up, Dana, that would be great. Do you have the physical address? Do you know where you're going? Because with all this redistricting, it might not be where it was the last election, okay? Go to your Board of Elections website and find out where it is that you need to go. If you don't know who's the incumbent, those are the people who are going to be the hardest to beat, but you want to know who they are. Do you live in an open or a closed primary? In some states, it might be too late for you to register. In some states, you have to be registered with the party to elect those candidates in a Democratic primary or in a Republican primary. So you should know that information. For judges, you definitely need to look up how they have maybe, if they're teachers, what things do they teach in the classroom? If they are have served in any other capacity, what has their voting record been? What kind of writings have they done in law journals? You should contact the candidates and the incumbents regarding your issues. For us, it's always reparations, and know who you're voting for. Know who you're voting for, know where you're going. So that is our little quick and handy checklist. This has been another episode, our 22nd episode of the Black Civics Collective. I want to shout out our producer, the beautiful Miss Dana Dorsey. She always holds the ship down here, making sure that our production is what we need it to be. And for those of you who have not heard of this organization before, please make sure that you always check us out. You can go to our website, naasd.org. And if you go to our website, we have information about who we are, what we do. You can subscribe and you can get access to our newsletter so that you can stay informed on what we have coming out. I have said it on our last show, and I'll say it again on this show, that in the fall we do have something really good coming up in the works. We've been a little quiet, but we're not going to be quiet in the fall. So stay engaged with us. Thank you so much. Again, Wednesday, May 27th, you want to be at that St. Paul meeting so you can see the good brother Jeremie at work, and you can get the full presentation on this REI stuff and know why disaggregation is necessary for that to be an effective tool even in the reparations space. Until next time, I'm your host, Friday Jones. This has been brought to you by the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants. Thank you so much. Happy Sunday.